Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 437. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
For your birthday, I actually forgot what I called you on your post, on your page, which is, there's an irony to this because I'm older than you. Not by much.
I'm 50 now. I'm 50. I'm proud to say I am 50. I think I look great for a 50-year-old.
You do look great for a 50-year-old. That's a good... Well, in that case...
I look terrible for a 44-year-old, but I look great for a 50-year-old, so I'm going to stick with that.
Oh, I might go with that. I was just going to say that I'm 44, so you are older than me, but now that I like your spin on this. I think I look great for a 50-year-old, too.
It works.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to go with that. I'm still older than you. On this episode, we're going to continue our look at the titles that are post the Convergence event. And we're going to touch on some old favorites like Action and Detective. We're going to touch on some of the newer ones like Dr. Fate and Constantine. We're going to take a look at the Green Lantern books. We revisit things like Omega Men. So please take a look at the show notes to make sure that we don't spoil anything for you. We have a fun, casual conversation about all this. And we have a couple of great listener voicemails. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring us this episode is once again DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what do we got going on at DCBService.com?
Bundles, bundles, bundles. I love DCBS bundles, and I'm very thankful to them for doing this. As always, they've got their bundle package 1, bundle package 2, each one having some of the different new titles, as of course the returning series bundle. Each one of these bundles, 50% off. You gotta love a 50% savings, especially look at the different packages. You want, if you're getting these titles, hey, right there, boom, you jump on it, you get your 50% off. But also with variant covers, and this month we have the Green Lantern 75th variant cover. Also, that one's 45% off the selected titles of the Green Lantern variant covers. Right there, one click, easy pickup of all your variant covers, pickup of your different bundles. Thank you, thank you, thank you, DCBS.
Remember, their digital partner, whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics, link those accounts, do your purchases through their website, and you get 5% of those purchases towards your DCB service order. Remember to do your purchases through their website, though, so you get credit for that towards your accounts. Over at InStockTrades.com, I love these deals of the week, the 50% off deals. They got, I'm obviously geeking out about the Batman Arkham Knight video game. They just announced that in a couple of weeks the Batgirl download content's coming. There's a whole Batgirl storyline that's going to be coming out. Batman Arkham Knight, the hardcover, Volume 1, is out, and it's 50% off, only $9.99. I do say if you aren't playing the game and you want to just read the story and kind of learn more about the world, you don't need to be playing the game to enjoy this book. It's a very well-written title, and it's one that I can highly recommend to Batman fans, so please consider picking it up. It's a great book. Batman Eternal, the trade paperback, Volume 2, is 50% off, only $19.99. Marvel Universe, I'm going to shout this one out, because Guardians of the Galaxy was just a really cool movie, and some of you listening to this might have been a fan of that, and I'm not reading any Guardians of the Galaxy. They got this trade paperback digest. It's 50% off, only $4.99. I mean, for $5 you can get a digest of Guardians of the Galaxy material. I think it's really cool stuff. But also, their top seller number 1 is the JSA Omnibus hardcover, Volume 3, 42% off, only $72.50. It's a great site to browse through. Go to InStockTrades.com, look at all the new releases, search for creators, titles, characters, and you can find books for you. And remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping, and that's InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotlines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Jim, a lot of this episode we're going to talk kind of casually about books just because we want to get in a lot of content on this one just due to time. And I want to start just talking about Detective Comics number 42. We're gonna stop back to some books that we've talked about recently. We're also going to talk about some of the books in the New 52. Well, I should say the post-convergence era, because it's not the New 52 anymore, right? It's the post-convergence era of DC. But the reason why I want to talk about this one, I'm loving the balance of this book. I'm loving not only the Jim Gordon as Batman bits, but I'm really loving seeing. I'm a huge Renee Montoya fan. I particularly this harkens back to the Gotham Central days today to see her with Harvey Bullock. But I love that it's not just the three of them. There's this intrigue going on in the Gotham City Police Department that's great. But this was great because it was another opportunity to see more of what Jim Gordon operates like as this Batman. You know, how thugs are reacting to it and how it's different than the Batman we know and love, and just some of the limitations to being in a suit of armor. I like that it's not as simple as, yeah, you're more bulletproof, you have all this extra strength and things like that due to it, but you have to overcome some of the weaknesses, like the stuff that they were doing with the legs, where they need to, like, take out the legs. He's dealing with a gang that is well aware of how to deal with this kind of armament, and that part I really found intriguing about this. Starting him out right away with a tough villain that is not trying to go after the former Batman, is targeting this Batman. That story's pulling me in, besides all the great police intrigue.
Yeah, these aren't a gang. This is mercenaries. They're hired for one specific job. And I honestly think the job isn't to take out the Batman. I think the job is to take the Batman armor. I think this whole thing has been set up, to get their hands on that armor, not to take out and kill the Batman. Because you think about it, when he has their first encounter with him, he puts their one guy in the hospital, and the one wants vengeance. And he's like, hey, we got a job to do. Mission first, always. And I don't think the mission was to kill Batman. I think the mission is to get that armor. So it's kind of interesting to see how you're going for your weak spots. You're going for your vulnerable areas, but they're not trying to destroy the armor. They're not trying to kill Batman. I really think they're trying to take it.
It says that trying to build toys for JD is more important than, their revenge. What toys are they talking about?
The armor, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing has been at least this crew is they're trying to get their hands, and that's an interesting thing about with the Batman itself being how it's no longer Bruce, it's no longer, Batman. It is a body armor. So anyone can look at it and say, hey, I get my hands on that thing, I could become Batman, or I could use it for my own purposes, reverse engineering, make an army filled with these guys, and just the whole process that they can go through. It adds a whole nother different area that they have to deal with in regard to Batman.
Huh. I wasn't looking at it as they were trying to go after the suit, but I don't really have a reason to think otherwise. I'm very interested in their motivations on it. I like the fact that we've got mercenaries who are very smart and they're specifically targeting him. So I want to see what's going on. I'm intrigued by that. I don't know that I disagree with you. It's funny how I think the shifting focus between them and what's going on behind the scenes. I wonder if they haven't gotten information about the suit of armor from the inside person.
Well, we know there's someone who is a spy inside the Bat Task Force.
Well, we know that already. It's right. Bullock's partner.
Right. So is she reporting to them or is she reporting to somebody else?
I don't know. Because there were 11 missed calls on her phone that Bullock noticed. So there's a whole intrigue there. I don't know. I do think that there's a possibility that some of this is tied together. I'm very intrigued by the whole thing. I'm finding this gripping. You know what it is? This is an interesting book because I'm really just enjoying the ride. I'm content to let the mystery unfold. They're feeding me little bits of information. I clearly haven't totally wrapped my head around it. I don't have any dispute with what you're saying. I haven't really formulated in my own mind like what I think is going on there, other than the fact that these guys have a clear understanding of how to take Batman down.
Yeah.
So there's a targeted reason for that. If they're after the suit, that's great. I'm into the story. I don't know that that's what they're doing yet, but I loved that Gordon is like, I'm getting out of the suit. I'm going to go do what I do, because that's Jim Gordon. That's very Jim Gordon, that moment. Gordon is not a guy to stand and wait on the sidelines. He's just not. We've known that before he took on this role. So I really am enjoying seeing him kind of do this as Batman, and how it feels like it's a different Batman to us as the reader. It feels like Jim Gordon in the suit. That distinction's really important to me because it's making the book interesting. I like it a lot more. What I like about Dick Grayson when he was Batman, same thing. It didn't feel like it was him trying to be Bruce. It felt like Dick Grayson trying to be Batman with his skill set, with his way of operating, which makes for a different Batman. This is doing the same thing. I'm into it. This is something that I'm really excited about with this book, and I really wanted to talk about this again because of this.
And you know, the thing I like, especially about this book, is the fact that when I look at this Bat armor, I know this wasn't designed by Bruce Wayne. I know this wasn't built by Lucius Fox because, just little stuff that they're dealing with, like the water trick that the bad guys use to short out the system. There's no way Bruce would have let that happen. Bruce would have thought of that as a possible attack against him and had a defensive mechanism put in place just because he's Bruce Wayne. Lucius Fox, same thing. Lucius would have thought of that kind of stuff. But this isn't built by them. This is a completely different person built and designing this thing. They're not thinking 10 steps ahead like Batman always does. So you now have to rely on stuff like Gordon, jettisoning himself out to go hand to hand. You have to rely on the support team showing up. You've got to rely on these different factors about this. And I think for me, that's something kind of neat about the story that we're actually seeing this side of it, where it's not just a Batman who's prepared for every possible contingency because he is so dang cool.
To your point, too, I think that also separates him from Dick Grayson because Dick Grayson was trained by the Bat. Mm-hmm. So because of that, even though he was different because he's more acrobatic and he's more, friendly and outgoing, he still knows, like Batman, he grew up with Bruce's training and seeing Bruce in and out of the costume, knowing what Bruce did to train and prepare and to think ahead. Even though it didn't look exactly the same, it did look a lot closer than this does, and I like the distinction. And to your point, that I love the way you explain that, because that is what I'm digging about this book, that the fact that Jim Gordon does feel so different in the armor and out of the armor. You're right. The armor does look different. It's because this task force is not sanctioned by Batman. This is very much put on by the city. I'm going to be very curious to see what it's like when Batman tries to return. Because Bruce is going to come back. That's going to happen. What does that look like in this world? That being said, I'm enjoying the ride getting there.
Yeah, I know. I've been playing in my head possibilities on what happens, Bat versus Bat, or does Gordon, realize, okay, this is the real Batman, I'm stepping down. How does this play out? Because we know Gordon wants to see if a police-sanctioned Batman will work. He wants this to work, and that's part of the reason we see him in other books going after Batgirl. We see him, going one-on-one with Superman, where this is now a police-sanctioned, entity. This is no longer a vigilante. When the real vigilante comes back, will he step down for that vigilante? And those are the moments I'm anticipating and I'm looking forward to. And it could be a while from now because I'm enjoying the story I'm getting, but I know in the back of my head one day we're going to get that story.
And I want to see it.
Yeah.
However it plays out.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing. I'm convinced that story's already planned. They know the arc for this. They know forget the pun, what the end game is going to be to all this. And I really didn't mean it that way, but I mean, there's no other way to term it. That really, they know that. I like that this feels like a story with a plan to it, and I want to see where it goes. I'm really very, very into it. It's exciting and it's bold. DC's doing some really fun things right now. Can we chat a little bit too casually about Action Comics number 42?
Oh, God,
speaking
I'll
of,
always talk action.
I cannot be more Superman happy right now. I jumped to this. I really could not wait to read and see more of what's going on with this story. You know what I loved? The fact that, that he's lost a lot of his power. There's this sense of a rush to the whole thing. He talked about that when he was fighting that creature, how, he's not as strong. There's this sense of, I don't know if I can beat this, but he keeps going and keeps fighting it. And even that part where it feels like flying again. It's those bits of it I'm really finding I'm finding I'm enjoying myself riding along with Clark and trying to resolve, like, is this, how long is he going to be in this state? And what does that mean for him? Because it's really a double whammy. We talk a lot about the identity and the fact that that's been revealed, but I think just as interesting and adding such a major twist to it, everyone knows who he is and he's depowered.
Yeah.
That's a huge double whammy. Because before, you could say we could fly into the Fortress of Solitude. You got that. He doesn't have a solitude place anymore. What's going on with his city, politics that's going on there, I want to know who's driving that. This need to discredit him.
Yeah.
That they're trying to do here. I love his stance with the people there. And the fact that you've got people that are stepping up and saying, we got to be careful how we do this. We got to handle this the way Superman would. It goes back to what I love about Superman and why I've always considered him a leader. And I'm really not egging you. I don't mean to egg you on. What I'm saying is I like the inspirational side of Superman. So take the leader part of it. Superman is an inspiration. And you see, this is something that I think it's really important. I don't think we've seen it as strong in the New 52 as I'd like to see. This is like, it's coming full circle now. I'm starting to see everything that he's done since the first issue of Action Comics, since the first issue of Superman, has had an impact on these people. This, in many ways, has added to my value of his ride up to this point. Because now what we're seeing is how people are reacting to him that have been closest to him. There's a pride in people that live in this area. They're banding together and trying to do a peaceful stance, a peaceful demonstration to say, this is our town, this is our area, our section. We're not doing anything wrong. We want to do a peaceful demonstration. And there's forces at work that are trying to turn this into something else. They're trying to put a spin on this, to discredit Superman, to justify attacking these people, to make it look like he's inspiring a violence, a rebellion, making Superman something to fear, and really taking the concept of Superman and making it something to fear. This story is taking so many twists and turns that I'm really enjoying. This is Superman has to overcome insurmountable odds here. He's got these creatures that are seeking him. We don't know where they came from yet. This is the part of the story we've been dropped into. We don't know where they've come from and what their goal is, other than they're out to get him somehow. Do they have something to do with his power loss, his continued power loss? I don't know.
Yeah, one of the things I really digged about this was, with any conspiracy theorist type people, they'll always say that, the police are intentionally trying to cause riots and this, and there's all types of negative stuff. There's all this police stuff comments constantly throughout the internet. And I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm simply saying it's out there. And I love the fact that they're pulling that into this comic where we're seeing these police officers who are basically, we have a peaceful demonstration. They've got the riot stuff out, and they start shooting tear gas into the peaceful demonstration. Well, and you got Superman standing there, holding line, and they're pounding on him, hitting him with blasters and whatnot, and all type of stuff, just to provoke the punch. And finally, they get the punch, and when they get that punch, that's what that cop was waiting for. That's what he was hoping for, because they now have Superman assaulting a police officer. They now have what they wanted. They now have that thing that they can hold against him. Now, right, wrong, this is what they're looking for. This is what they want. This is their end game. And it's kind of interesting seeing that with everything that we have going on all around us in the real world, and then this type of stuff playing out in the comic. And I'm just like, I want to know who's behind it. I want to know what's going on with the further. There's so many things about Superman I want to know. And I love the fact that they're giving us this stuff, and it just keeps building and building. And now we head to this whole... He's going to have a legal side to him. And it's not like he can hide anymore, because we know who he's Clark Kent. So he's now going to be facing legal issues with the police. So he's going to become a fugitive. And what happens when Superman becomes a fugitive?
Here's the thing that I find interesting, and I totally loved your whole point about, this kind of plays into modern conspiracy theories. But what I loved is it's not as simple as that, because there were plants in that group that were clearly there to egg him on.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there were some that were just plain dumbfounded, like, wait, we can't just do this. These people aren't doing anything wrong. I like that there were voices on the police that were speaking up about what was right. I thought that was really critically important because like you, I'm a big believer in the police. I'm a big believer in the military. These are areas, I've never been a police officer. I've never been in the military. But what I really believe is you can have negative portrayals of some people who are power mad or power hungry or corrupt, right? And Gotham, I think, is one of those places where you see a lot of that. I like that when you have situations like this in Metropolis, you tend to see more of your tried and true police officers. So you got plants like this, but they stand out because you got other people that are just there with the whole cease and desist mentality. They're not egging anything on. They're really there to stop this. And under the impression that, like, we're only going to go so far with this, there's a line. There's people on their side that are crossing the line, and they're they're like, wait, we can't do this. What are you doing? And some of them are even getting attacked by their fellow police officers because of it. I'm talking about the ones that speak up against, hey, wait a minute, hang on. We're going a little far here. These people are just peacefully demonstrating, and they're getting jabbed and taken out about it. I liked seeing that because I think it's important to portray that there are people, even, let's say half the squad was on the take or was plants, whatever the backstory is. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen the full dots connected. I like that there were people that were there that were your tried and true good police officers. You got to see that on both sides. You had rabble-rousers. Actually, and you had rabble-rousers. You had the guy with the baseball bat. Yeah. I like that he had to step back and kind of make the play of the girl who clearly, she was the voice of reason saying, hey, I was a former one. You don't understand. You do this, you give them justification to attack. Let's not do that. Let's sit in. They can't attack us. And when they did, even though she said that, it really made it, I thought, stand out that much more that, wow, this really is corruption. This really is done with the purpose of discrediting Superman. And also discrediting any of the people that could possibly speak up against them.
Right.
Because now they're going to have, they can edit footage, they can do whatever, because you're sure somebody's filming this, right? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Jimmy Olsen is there. What's his spin going to be on all this? This is going to be one side. This is going to be he said, she said very, very quickly throughout all this. It's going to be interesting to see the viral movements that go either way on this. And I think we're going to see two factions building. People that are pro and people that are against Superman from this. It's going to be interesting to see which ones win out. I like this story a lot. It's intriguing to me. I love that Superman feels very Superman in these moments. To step up the way that he is and to grab the chains and knowing that this for him is a feat of strength. He's taking punches and taking a beating specifically for the purpose of trying to send a message. You aren't going to egg me on. You aren't going to make this happen until they go too far. And once
they start attacking the innocent people, that's when Superman throws down. But that whole part, is going to get lost in the shuffle. That whole part is going to get dropped. And even when Olsen reveals, hey, look, you can see they're attacking, Olsen's part's going to get downplayed. They're going to go with him. Hey, this, you can't believe this guy. He is Superman's accomplice. He is Clark Kent's roommate. This is the guy who knew the secret, who, didn't tell anybody. We can't trust him. He's, within leagues with the alien. And that's the kind of way, again, I love seeing this type of stuff, knowing that, this kind of stuff actually, where people are taking one piece of the information and saying, no, it's this, no, it's this, no, it's that. And, who's to say what the truth is? When you're not physically standing there, not physically seeing the stuff occur, who's to say, what the actual real truth is? And I love the fact that we're going to get, I'm assuming we're going to get that in Action Comics. We're going to get that whole play out. And, in my head, I'm assuming all this is all interconnected, and this is going to lead to why the power fluctuations and whatnot, everything going on with Clark. But who knows? Maybe this is a side story. Maybe that's something different. I don't know where this is going. It's part of my excitement and true enjoyment of this Superman story because I don't know where it's going to go yet.
I actually love that about this story. I love the fact that I do feel it's interconnected, but I don't have any problem with this concept. there might be a story going on in Superman. There might be a story going on in Superman, Wonder Woman. There might be a story going on in Action, depending on how this all plays out, where they're reflective of the world that Clark's dealing with. And in actions in one book reflect a larger story in a different book. If I'm making any sense at all, there might be different stories going on that are like reflecting the current state of Superman and kind of giving us a bigger picture of his world. I don't know what route they're going with this. I'm just really, really enjoying the ride. And I like that it feels organic. I like that it doesn't feel like everything that happened before. I really meant what I said earlier. I feel like this has, for me, upped the ante of a lot of the early parts of this run where I felt like we had lost a little bit of Superman, where the idea of him being this inspiration that people look up to and all that. We're seeing here that, no, he was. Everything that he did before, he did build a following, and there are people that are willing to stand up for him. And there are people that know, especially the people that are closest to where he lived, knew what this guy was all about, and they're proud that he lived there. That type of stuff has really made this book series that we've been reading all along since the New 52 started have more value for me. I like that a story can turn me around and give me... I've always enjoyed Superman since the New 52, but I've spoken quite recently about how the recent runs of the book have just got me more excited. I'm more of a Superman fan again now. I feel like we're really kicking it up a notch, and I feel this is building off of that foundation. And it's really made me enjoy all of it that much more, and I'm really, really glad to be a Superman reader right now. This stuff is fun.
Yeah, oh, big time, big time.
Do you mind if we talk a little Dr. Fate?
Hey, actually, before we do...
Sure.
I want to just a really quick comment on Omega Men.
Oh, please,
Number 2. Because, I know last time I was like, I'm, trying to get the groove. Number 2 absolutely had me going, dang, this is cool. This is a really, really awesome book. I'm especially, again, talking about political intrigue. We're dealing with a complete foreign society that, I'm still trying to get my grasp on who and what are these people? Who are they? Who are these characters? But even though I don't know them, I still have that feeling that I understand them. I can kind of get the groove of where they're coming from. And this thing it's complete by end of issue 2, completely has me pulled in to, oh my God, you've got to give Omega Men a read. And I recommend issues 1 and 2 before you make any judgment on it, just because 1 gives you an intro, 2 really starts hammering this stuff home.
And the
I'm
preview.
Excited for 3.
And the free preview.
Oh, and the free preview. Yes, you have to read the free preview as well. This is something that they're building something really cool here. This, we're getting on the ground floor of something, and I'm very excited for issue 3, 4, 5, etc.
I like, too, that there's this sense of it's been a long time where this corruption's been building. And these are, it's building a slow resistance.
Yeah.
The Omega Men. These are people where it's like, we're the only ones that can stand up for the injustices that we're seeing. Like, we saw a whole world destroyed in this for all extensive purposes. The people killed. Basically, them saying, our goal here is to save everybody and to end this corruption. But yet, he lied directly to Kyle Rayner. and basically for the purpose of saying, look, you can't go do this right now. I've got this covered. If we go down there, it could be a greater loss of life. And this justification of, I love that Omega Men is a gray area book where you're kind of feeling out: are they heroes? Are they villains? Are they somewhere in between? What are they? That part of this, I like that because I don't know the characters really well. I feel like I'm growing with them gradually. And your comments that issue 2 improved on issue 1, I totally agree with that because I feel like I'm getting to know more of the world. And I mean, it's a much larger world. It's multiple planets and things like that. But I'm finding that I'm more interested in it. Kyle Rayner being in this book is brilliant.
Yeah, I want to know what happened to Kyle. Because he's not unleashing the White Lantern power. What happened? What's going on completely with him. And I love the ending of this issue with him. He's in the Omega Men uniform, and he just takes his blood in brightest days, in blackest night, and completely overcovers the Omega symbol with the Green Lantern symbol in his blood. Cool visual, cool moment. And once again, it's showing some neat resistance from Kyle. I want to see how Kyle reacts with the Omega Men. Does he eventually learn and understand them, or does he fight back against them? What's going to happen here? Who's he going to be by the end of this book? And that's something very interesting that I thought I understood and knew who Kyle was. And this person, I'm still seeing Kyle, but I got to know some more pieces. I got to know what happened. How did he get captured? How did he get, here? How's the big broad picture? Once again, with what happened to the Green Lanterns, did that affect him? Was it him who affected it? I don't know. And I'm very happy and excited again for issue 3. I want to see more. I want to get more of who these people are. I want to see more of Kyle.
Well, here's the beauty of it is nobody knows he's still alive.
Right.
I mean, that was in question before. Now they publicly broadcast his death.
Yeah.
So nobody's looking for him.
Now. Once again, he's dead.
So what is the end game with him? What are they really trying to do? That part's going to be very interesting. Kyle, the reason why I said Kyle's so brilliant, he's my familiar character. So his feeling out this group, and I think that's been gradual since the early appearances. I felt like I was watching what was happening to Kyle. Like in issues, the preview in issue 1, I felt like I was watching it. In issue 2, and I think this is where it turned around for me. I don't know if you feel the same way. I felt more I was sitting there with Kyle. Like, I'm starting to get my head around more, wow, Kyle's got this, watch in his neck, and they'll blow him up. And I felt like more I was relating to Kyle in trying to figure out his captors, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of that, as I've mentioned many times on the show. I like to feel like I'm riding along with my main characters, my heroes. I feel like I'm doing that now with Kyle. I'm starting to figure things out. The ending part was so brilliant because that added to that for me. And I'm like, yeah, Green Lantern it up, rebel against that idea. Yeah, you tell me I'm an Omega Man, fine, I'm going to do this. I'm very interested in the Omega Men team. I'm interested in the book. Love the ship.
Yeah.
The whole thing they got going on here is just really, really cool. It plays into a lot of what I loved about sci-fi growing up, and with the familiarity of a character who I really love in Kyle Rayner being my latch-on. Deep philosophies going on here. It's going to. I feel like there's going to be a lot of times in this where we're questioning, is what's happening here right or wrong? I get into that kind of stuff. This book is separating itself very fast. The art, I want to add a piece onto this. I love the art style of this book. I think I mentioned that in issue 1, and if I didn't, I'm remiss in not doing it. This is a very stylized book that fits the sci-fi atmosphere and genre that it's got going on. And I love some of the paneling choices, straight down to what happened, like you said, on the very last page, and the quotes that they end up throwing through. I just think add a nice touch to the book. It's another home run from Tom King, who I'm just finding that I'm really adoring his work because he's a unique voice, and I really like what he's doing with Tim Seeley on Grayson. Really like what's going on here. It's a name I'm growing to trust in what he does because everything I pick up just winds up being cool.
Yeah, I agree. He's on that list of mine of writers that when I see their name, like, okay, I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to give it a read, just because I trust what he does, and how he's, the story he's telling. It's, and especially I'm really digging this art style. I agree completely with you what you said. It's not just the story told, but the visual. It's the written as well as the artwork really working well together.
I want to talk about Dr. Fate.
Yeah, let's talk to Dr.
This is a book that I was really, really anticipating through different iterations of Dr. Fate. I've shared on the show many times that I'm a big fan of Dr. Fate. I love the concept. I grew up with the original Dr. Fate, Kent Nelson, being a character that I knew from those crossovers from JSA, JLA, and was always intrigued by the character. And then when the character started exploding into different books, I started to get to know the character a lot, the character concept a lot more. This is everything I was hoping it would be. And yet it wasn't what I expected it to be. I like that this was set on Earth. There was this flood coming, and we've got these magical avatars, that are animal form, that are basically, these gods these mystical creatures that are basically saying, the Earth's coming to an end, and let's just let it all get wiped out. Because this actually is something that's very contemporary right now. We keep hearing of, people are seeing, the whole Mayan thing that was going on, and then people are looking to revelations now. And I'm not mocking anybody for their beliefs. I don't mean it that way. You hear a lot more right now that people are seeing a lot of signs of the end of everything. So this is a story that very much reflects that. This is where society's at, and people are seeing this. So it's contemporary to a lot of what you're seeing people believe is where things are heading. So I like the idea that, okay, let's go with this. And, what if there is a mystical being in the DC universe that can address some of this? Maybe he can fight against what's coming and be our salvation. I love that kind of stuff because it feels very grounded in what people are concerned about today, yet it has this sense of hope to it. Like this kid who just is basically feels like one of us. I was this gawky teenager, right? I mean, you knew me back then, and I'm watching this and looking at this kid, and he's kind of like, wait a minute, I got a helmet that's talking to me now. What I love about Dr. Fate and what separates it is, especially in later years with the character, I've loved the idea that because the helmet has an entity or entities inside it, and that was something that's been further expanded over the years, but with Kent Nelson and with other characters, there's a creep factor to having that on your head. Because I've always loved the superhero idea when I'm in full control. I'm the superhero. I don't much like the idea of the lack of privacy this provides. There's a creep factor to this. Somebody else is in the driver's seat and it changes you, manipulates you, and you have to fight for control. I think my mental faculties, there's times where I'm very mental, but my mental faculties are something that I would be very afraid to lose control of. I think Firestorm has this kind of factor to it as well. And I really liked that this played out into this, where he was kind of freaked out by the whole experience. There's a coolness factor at certain points in time, when you're able to do these cool things with the magical powers, but there was also this sense of, I got to get this thing off of me, which is not typical superhero. It's you're yeah, cool, I want to be that. Even Superman, when he was depowered, had that sense of, this is invigorating, I feel like I'm flying again. And that's when he's in grave danger. In this kid's case, there's a creep factor to part of what he's going through that I really like.
Well, it's because he's not in complete control.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you go back to, we got a med student this time. It's not a full-fledged doctor. So he has his insecurities going into it. Whereas the previous fates to me that I've read have always seemed more confident, more strong in who they are. So now we got this younger kid plus something else that's kind of trying to take over, and and even when he's getting that moment, hey, let it go, you're becoming one with the helmet. He's like, no, I'm losing control, and I like those factors that it came out with this. And again, this is a title that. Multiple read-throughs have really helped me get a grasp of who this is and what's going on. Initial read-throughs, I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to an origin story. I don't know if I want to go back to a kid. And there was a lot of, questionables on this in my head when I was reading it. And then doing the second and third read-throughs, you start getting the understanding of the complexities that we're going to get in this book. And that's the kind of stuff I'm like, okay, they're going into a different type of hero, a different type of, character, a different type of, Dr. Fate. And I don't know, those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to now with this title, going to see, how this kid handles this and what happens to his family, what happens,
yes.
When Anubis is now striking. So he's dealing with, the god of death, the Egyptian god of death now. So where is this going to go with him? Is he going to be able to balance personal life and Dr. Fate? Is that going to play into the factors? What's going to happen here?
Shia the dad, the mom, those all added to it to me as well. And I'm glad you brought that part up, because the different elements of his personal life and everything like that really played into making this book interesting for me. I walked in, I told you this is one of the books that I was really anticipating. For you, I think, we obviously walked in, we have different reading experiences from our past and different interests in the character. You mentioned the fact that it was multiple read-throughs for you to wrap your head kind of around this book. Where are you at? I really loved this book. I do agree with your comments, though, that I needed a couple read-throughs to kind of wrap my head around the story, and that's not a negative on it. There was a lot going on here, and I really found that through like my second and third read-through, I really understood the world more. So your point's well met there. I wound up in the end loving this, and I'm really excited for issue 2. Where are you at? I don't know if you're in the same place or not, but I agree with your comments that this book took a couple read-throughs for me to kind of pick my head on where it was and what it was all about, but was thrilled at the end of that journey.
I'm in a good place with the book now. I think you're probably more excited than I am, but I am. I definitely want to continue reading this, and I want to see what happens to him. I want to see, what happens between him versus Anubis, and I especially want to see what happens to his dad, because it ends very bad for the dad. Where it's funny because you initially see him jump in the cab. He's a cab driver, and he's got the fare's like, "Hey, you got to take me to the airport. You got to go," and gets the dad out into the boonies, and it turns out that that's not exactly a person that's in the back of his cab. That's good. There's the dad's got an potential, may not be coming back. May not be coming back from this, or maybe the dad's going to become an agent, an unwilling agent of darkness. I don't know. And those are the kind of stuff where I'm looking at saying, okay, this kind of things could happen to this guy. And so I am curious about it. And I definitely want to read issue 2, etc. So I'm in a very good place with this book.
Can we jump to Green Lantern number 42? Because I want to make sure on this episode we get a chance to. I know you and I are very eager to talk about the changing Green Lantern universe, and there's been a lot that really happened off camera. We haven't seen it all play out yet, and I really want to talk about what's going on with Hal first, but then I think we're going to kind of organically jump to what's going on in the Lost Lanterns and, of course, Sinestro, our 3 Green Lantern books that are happening here. I'm looking at issue 42 right now and looking at the covers, and I love the opening page where we see Hal's ship. And it's a sassy ship, to say the least. I actually really like the relationship where Hal, the pilot, is behind, first of all, a ship that looks cool. This took me back to being a kid. And I'm going to be honest, I geeked out about this because I've always loved, what I love about Star Wars, I love the Millennium Falcon. The idea that there was this ship that, not only could you fly, but you could do all these cool things in it. It's a smuggling ship. You could live in it. You could play games in it. You can, wield a lightsaber in it. And yet, and TIE fighters come at you and you get into cockpits and it's a shooting game. It was, as a kid, it was a pure geek out to be a part of that. This ship kind of takes me back to that, and this was a book that struck me is that it's one of the things I liked about Omega Men's ship too. I'm loving these unique spaceships that we're seeing now and finding it cool, but Hal's in particular because Hal's got the Han Solo swagger, and to see him in this light as opposed to being the test pilot on Earth's really working for me. And I actually like his new costume. I like the hair because it's all story driven. This guy's been on the run. He's taken the heat for some of the choices that happened with the Durlans. It wasn't anything that Hal did wrong. It wasn't anything the Green Lanterns did wrong. He had to take a leadership, really be a leader and say, somebody's got to take a hit for this. We didn't really do any of this, but how are you going to convince the universe of that? You can't. So somebody's got to take the blame. It's got to be me. I went nuts. And that was, the whole setup was really to put him in this place. In the meantime, Hal's gone on the run, comes back to find out that where is everybody? What happened to the Lanterns? He is, in everyone's mind, the last Lantern right now. And he's a renegade. Yeah. For all extents and purposes, he's almost as Sinestro right now in the eyes of people. Maybe Sinestro is more organized than what Hal's got going on at the moment. And I really am loving this storyline with Hal. I love the Gauntlet. I love that the Gauntlet is got kind of a mind of its own. that part's working for me. There's so much of this book that's working, and I'm going to keep rambling on and on. Where are you at on this book? What are you digging about? Are you digging Green Lantern as much as I am?
Yeah, you and I are on the same page on this one. Yeah, we're 100%. And I'm, again, with you, everything you were saying, I was just silently nodding my head saying, yes, yes, yes. I really do dig the Hal Jordan Renegade, the swagger, the Han Solo comparison, absolutely perfect. And the ship, Darlene, is awesome. I love the fact you get the one sequence when he's flying and he's angry and he's just, he's getting there and he's like, engine temperatures are rising rapidly, Hal. You should reduce speed. How many steering wheels you see on this ship, Darlene? Steering wheels? I see a throttle. Just let me do the driving. Right, because you always make wise choices. You got a ship giving you grief. You gotta love it, man. This was, I tell you, again, with the whole mystery of the Green Lantern Corps, mystery of everything going on. But again, we're seeing some neat characters they're starting to develop out of this, where this isn't just going to be Hal Jordan and Darlene. We're now adding to his cast and crew. Now, his cast and crew are probably going to rotate and things are going to happen, but it's still going to be, there's not just going to be the one character. And I think that for me is the important part of, we see Hal Jordan, we're going to see some of his interactions. I'm curious if he ever gets to when we see Hal Jordan interacting with people who knew him from before. Because right now, we've only seen him deal with people who've never really met Hal Jordan, who just knew him as this leader of the Corps who's wanted, who's a renegade. What's going to happen when he runs into somebody that actually knows Hal Jordan? Those are the kind of stuff I'm looking forward to.
Well, Justice League has to eventually catch up to this.
Eventually, yeah.
And I want to see when that happens. It's because I'm assuming Justice League takes place before this. Although not knowing where the storyline goes, it could take place after this. I'm making the assumption that this is going to be something that's going to be a longer stretch for Hal, and Justice League will take place before. I don't need to know that right now. I would love to at some point see this reflected in Justice League. Right. It doesn't have to be right now because they got their own cool. Actually, the two Justice League books have their own cool storylines going on right now. I don't need that at the moment. I just right now am enjoying this ride, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. Venditti is somebody who, if I'm butchering his last name, I apologize because I'm loving his work here. Really love the stuff that we've got the Flash, we got Exo Man of War. This is a writer who's. It's funny, we were kind of in the same place as Dr. Fate as far as what our reading experience was. I know we wound up. I was completely geeking out over Dr. Fate, and honestly so. This was a very different experience right out of the starting gate, both 41 and 42 with this. It's because of the familiarity with the storytelling style. We knew this is where Hal was going from the way things were before Convergence hit, that we were leaping into this. I actually like the different reading experiences I'm getting out of DC right now. When you can compare Dr. Fate to this, they were two very different reading experiences. Omega Men is a very different reading experience than those other two books. Omega Men requires a couple reads for me as well because of the fact that I'm getting used to these characters I'm not familiar with and their world and motivations and trying to figure out who's doing what. I'm still trying to figure out who the players are in Omega Men. I don't know the characters very well. So it's, I'm trying to remember, is that guy on the team or is that guy a bad guy? And that's a lot of what's going on. And I'm enjoying that. It's fun, though, to read two books like that where they're very new to me and then jump to something that's really familiar and very much like I'm hanging with an old buddy. And that's where the Han Solo comparison comes in, because I'm like, yeah, this is Hal being wicked cool. It's a really fun ride with him. I love seeing him when he's out in space using his gauntlet. But the parts I really love, too, is we talk about him being a renegade, but yet he's still Green Lantern. He's got a code. There's a certain sequence where he's trying to return, for justice purposes, on behalf of the Green Lanterns, this villain to the home world of the wronged party. And when they show up and the homeworld's been destroyed, there's a situation there where, you're the only one left. So you're basically the judge and jury here. Hal's leaving it in this guy's hands, sort of. And you got to put that caveat there to make the decision. But I like that at the end, Hal goes, I am so glad I didn't need to step in. And I really loved that there was... Hal's still a good guy. He wasn't leaving it to I wouldn't have let you kill this guy, but I needed you to come to that decision on your own, is really what he was saying there. I loved every bit of that moment. It was great writing, great tension, and also very Hal Jordan. The guy learned something from it. This is a guy, you got to believe that Hal Jordan is this long-standing space cop, and that he's got a code, and it matters to him, but also that he's trying to be a leader, because this is a guy that led the Corps. So talk about making a leadership decision there and going, you know what, I got to believe in this guy. I got to believe this guy's going to make the right choice. I liked the reveal afterwards, though, and that really stuck for me. Black Hand? Want to talk about that?
Well, here's something I'm wondering. Mm-hmm. Now, with that little rock that is freezing and the Medusa effect, turning everything to stone, is that a piece of the Eternity Wall?
Oh.
Because that's how I took it as.
And Black Hand is feeling the after effects of it? Is that why Black Hand's having the issues? Because if you take a look at his hands
are stoned up.
Is he the one causing this intense death all over the place?
You know, maybe Hand was affected by his interactions with because he was involved with that whole, you know, when the New Gods, the battle with the New Gods, where they actually pulled people from the wall, and they were doing all types of, you know, freaky stuff. And a couple issues ago with that, I think that how Black Hand was affected somehow.
Sure. Yeah, I don't really have an argument for that.
Yeah,
that was a great cliffhanger because I wasn't expecting him to appear there.
So. Oh God, yeah, I was not even remotely thinking that, because as I'm going through the issue and you see that really cool space battle, I absolutely, artistically speaking, this was something amazing.
Yes.
Pencils, inks, coloring, full creative, you know, team behind this, you know. And this is one of those things where I have the issue on paper, but I also got it on digital. And I'm glad I have it on digital, because when you get the 2-page spreads on digital, it takes up, you know, almost my full screen of my computer. And I'm just sitting there looking at these massive green boulders that are flying at these ships. And you start looking at some of this art detail and you're like, man, this looks cool. But one of the things I loved in this was right throughout all this thing going on, we start seeing that little gray stone that's going to be the one rock that's going to affect everything. And you see it, you know, and when I was first initially reading this, my first read through, I didn't notice the stone. You know, but my art read throughs, that's when you see it just come from behind them, slowly go up and hit the ship, and they're all gone.
Can we talk a little bit about Lost Army, seeing as we're kind of organically talking about this? Because I want to talk about what happened to the Lanterns. You know, we got Lost Army #1, and really, this is one I can't recommend enough. You've got to read the preview, because the preview is where we get to see them hook up with Krona, who seems to be a much younger Krona that hasn't done all of the crazy, horrid things that we've seen Krona do. So now they're running along with Krona, who's a brilliant scientist as part of the Guardians. Due to circumstance, they've really got to keep him with them. There's a benefit to having him with them. And that debate becomes very interesting in the team. The other surprise, do you going to go to it? Who's the other surprise appearance in this one?
My man, Guy Gardner. Outstanding putt. It's Guy Gardner with 2 rings. I love the fact he's got the red and the green. It's now... And he doesn't know what happened to him. He's like, 1 second, I'm on Earth. Next thing you know, I'm here and I got 2 rings. So whatever happened to the Corps affected all Green Lanterns, and it still considers Guy Gardner to be a Green Lantern. I think that is kind of interesting, you know, in showing that whatever it was that did this, it wasn't just physically looking for the green rings. It was looking for Green Lanterns, and it was pulling them into play.
Specific players. You know who I really like, too? I don't know... You know, it's funny how there's characters that I remember seeing in the Green Lantern books, and I remember reading about them, but I don't know them real well. Like, Regia, I remember her for many, many years in Green Lantern books. Kilowog, obviously. But, like, Zro-Rek was a character who I loved. This is a character that's affected by the beings that it's around. Mm-hmm. And starts to take on the form, the personality, some of the character traits of the people around. Adds to an interesting twist. Also, as you're a team member working with this character, you don't really know what you're going to get. I mean, you talk about how sometimes somebody has a bad day, you don't know what you're going to get. Somebody hangs around with the wrong type of people or the right type of people. You could be getting very different versions of this character. I really love the dynamic that it added to this book. This felt very fresh and fun. And it takes advantage of the fact that having aliens as a part of the Green Lantern Corps really add an interesting part of the story. You and I have talked many times about one of the things we always loved about the Corps book, the main Green Lantern Corps book, was the fact that it wasn't just our main lanterns that we know and love. It was the ability to get to know and focus on certain other members of the Corps, and it added kind of a fresh flavor to the book. This is very much that, and I'm really loving that factor here.
Yeah, and I really do like having Krona in this book. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm reading this as if this is the Krona before he created the Gauntlet, before he started really turning. This is the initial Krona who was still a positive influence in Guardian life. He's a scientist. He's an explorer. He's trying to figure out what's going on in the universe, but he hasn't gone over the edge. Because I love some of those moments when he's seeing them use willpower to create physical manifestations, and he's like, "Wow, that's kind of an interesting theory there," you know. And you can see just the wheels turning in his head, where he's coming up with the idea that's going to be that first initial gauntlet that Hal Jordan's wearing. You know, and you can see that, just, where this guy is going to go to and how he's going to get there. And I think those are kind of the, moments that I'm like, man, it's kind of neat about this. But I like the fact that, they went to telepathic mode, where Krona's not going to hear him. It's only the rings are getting it, and they got to keep stuff from him. So we're getting some of that. We're going to be open, we're going to be honest, but we need to hold back, and we need to have that reserve. We need to have a level of strategery that, is John Stewart. And it's one of the reasons I was so excited that he was going to be in this book, and this was going to be his book, because I do love when you get those moments where it's, it's gut check time. When he went back to when he was pinned down, when he was a Marine and he was fighting and his unit was trapped, and they just, guess what? Knuckle up and fight it. Same thing with the Corps. They're surrounded by all these thingies that are, dissolving the antibodies, for lack of a better term. What do? You just slug it out with them, fight it out, fight your way through. And those are some really cool John Stewart moments.
Here's the thing. I enjoyed Krona so much in this issue. I started to wonder to myself, what if they swerve us and, what if Krona doesn't go bad?
And maybe that's the cause. Maybe Krona doesn't go bad, and somehow that's what causes the whole ring issue.
Yeah, who knows?
Because that was something that popped in my head. What if, by their actions they're doing now, they're causing what's going to happen to them? And the reason Hal doesn't get sucked in is because Hal's wearing the gauntlet. Hal's wearing the Krona gauntlet. The Yellow Corps doesn't get sucked in because they're wearing the yellow rings, which weren't created by the Guardians. But, because, Guy had his connection to the Guardians, he gets pulled into it. His red ring doesn't really protect him, because kind of in Guy's head, he is a Green Lantern. So maybe this whole thing is going to be this giant, one of those weird time travel loop things that, where the event actually causes itself.
You got to remember too that they're looking at this thing though with aggression, and there's a certain amount, is rage tied into that? And is Guy, kind of trapped between the two worlds? Is that why he's there, and why he's got a little bit of A and a little bit of B? Is this just a different imagining of rage versus willpower? I don't know. Because the red is very prevalent. The red is what these lanterns are trapped in and killed in, the ones that they find and they come across.
Yeah, that red crystal.
So, I can't imagine that being a throwaway. It's very interesting to see where that's going to go and what's going on with all that. I love the bit where he's real wreck, and I'm probably butchering the name, turns into Guy.
What are you looking at? Yeah.
Just really, really great stuff. This is a cool book. And talk about art. I really felt that the art style of this book was really spectacular as well. Very different than the main Green Lantern title. But, this is something that really, we've talked about this many times on the show. The Green Lantern books have really enjoyed Some great art. I think the Jon Stewart flashback sequences, where we the coloring switched to more of a desert setting, and we got to see that shift in tone, but yet it's the same art, it's the same team that's delivering that. I really loved how that played out, and then it led to us seeing Jon use that to form that memory, to form his army in the ring, when he was using them to battle. That part's going to be really cool. I want to see how they're able to recharge.
Yeah, where's that? That's, again, going to be something interesting because, they don't have the central battery anymore. Now, the ending giant red thingy that they run into at the end, I'm wondering if Guy is going to be able to tap into that thing with his red ring.
And is there a negative of that?
Yeah. I don't know. Again, there's so many. It's funny because I keep saying I don't know, but I really want to know, and it's, I think, part of the positive on the writing that it's giving us these mysteries. They're giving us some answers, but there's still a lot more mysteries. And I'm sitting there going, man, when's the next issue coming out? I want to read more. I want to feed me more. I'm sitting there chanting.
Aggression wins wars. You can cultivate it, shape it into a weapon, use it to cut right into the heart of your enemies. But what I'm looking at right now is a pyramid fueled by the stuff. I can feel it coming off in waves. More aggression and rage than I've ever felt before. And if it's a weapon, I can only imagine it's aimed right at us. Very cool to see where that... Great cliffhanger. Great first issue of this series. Again, more mystery. And how many lanterns were affected by this? How many are dead? And what happened to the ones that aren't a part of this? Because it can't be all of them. So there's a larger mystery. Yeah,
well, we definitely know... There's been a ton of lanterns that they've mentioned that they can't locate. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name with the multiple arms.
Salak.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Because he's another lantern that I always thought is kind of neat when I see kind of his interpretation of him and just when he's interacting, but he's not around. Where did he go? Is he trapped in a different section of this? Are they trapped in something completely different? We know in the regular universe, everybody thinks all the lanterns are gone. Where did they go? What happened? And it's, again, throughout the mystery, the giant mysteries of what happened to the Green Lanterns, or it's, I don't know when they're going to reveal it, but it's slowly, piece by piece, they're giving, in Green Lantern, Lost Army, and Sinestro, they're starting to throw out some stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing the mystery unfold.
Speaking of Sinestro, let's just jump right to it. Sinestro number 12. What a great book this has been. In its first, this is basically the celebration of the first year of Sinestro. I love that Soranik's still in this. Soranik was one of my absolute favorite creations that came out of Green Lantern Corps. I loved her relationship with Kyle. And when the new universe kicked off and that was kind of no longer a thing, I was really worried about the character. I'm so glad that not only are we seeing her in this book, but it's very much the same character that I adored so much previously. Because she's one of those characters that was really well developed. And I'm really glad to see, we always have the great Earth Lanterns that we all know and love. But I'm glad that they're not ignoring this larger cast that they've developed that fans have gotten a following for. And Soranik's one of those characters for me. I really enjoy this character. Her interactions with Sinestro are just great. And I think Sinestro's a character who works so well with a cast of characters, especially this crazy bunch, because this book is chock full of a whole bunch of loony. And I love me some loony. His sense of bringing order to the universe and trying to do that, his ego often gets in the way of, I think, him being almost likable. There's times where we read books with Sinestro where you want to see Sinestro kick butt because of the situation. He's an interesting gray area because I consider him a villain, but he's a villain, but there's moments where you just want to see him wreak havoc on bad guys. And you justify it somehow because there's times where, because he's so smart, I still consider him a villain, but there's things that he says that are right. So it makes you want to rally behind this character in a unique way. And it's different than, Secret Six. I love following the villains in that book, but they're villains. I mean, and they're crazy wacky, and there's no doubt in my mind that they're villains and their motivations and things. Sinestro, it's just a different sort of animal. It's a different sort of cause. I really do believe he's trying to do good things for his people, but what gets in the way is Sinestro's ideas of what might be right for them are not always going to necessarily be theirs. Because Sinestro's ego gets in the way of. Sinestro takes it one step too far in the sense that he believes that what he has planned for you is what's right for you.
Oh, yeah.
And you're happy to go along for that ride as long as you agree with those things. But there always comes the inevitable point where, no, wait a minute. I don't want you to do this. Don't do this to me. Don't take. Why are you leaving me here when you could move me there? I'm not really stuck on this soil yet. How about a safer place?
Yeah, our world's gonna explode. How about you put me over on that planet that's not gonna explode? What about that, Sinestro? And it's you talk about just like heroes. There's a lot of great heroes out there, in the Greek and mythology that always had that one classic flaw to them. If you're going to put Sinestro within that group, which I think he actually could kind of fit sometimes, it is that ego of his where he thinks he is 100% correct. There is no doubt. Now, some could call that confidence. Some could call that ego. I'm leaning more towards ego, and that's one of the things that makes him not a complete good guy in my book. It does have some, shades of villainy in him, but I do like the fact that he at times does think about others. Now, not completely about everybody else. It's only people connected. Like his people, he's trying to save. His daughter, he's trying to save. And he even doesn't tell her about the pending, rapture of the Green Lanterns because he knows she would run off to be by their side. A noble sentiment, I suppose. But, and I love the fact that he has that notion in his head. Like, I can't tell her that all her friends and everyone she cares about are about to die, because she'd sacrifice herself. I want her here. Now, is that dad looking after his daughter? Is that a guy who wants the medical doctor? Is that, Sinestro being Sinestro just to prove he's right? It's A, B, or C, possibly D, which is a combination of all of those. And I like that mystery of Sinestro.
Yeah, I'm with you. That mystery of him is what's half the fun with the character. I like that because of the fact that he's been a villain for so much of the career, you know like certain facets of him, but there's other things you don't know. I like his internal dialogue. I like learning how he views things. Seeing him analyze the people around him and his motivations for having those people surrounding him. When he knows people are going to betray him, but yet he still has them around anyway. Do you think he loves his daughter? Do you think that's something he's truly capable of? What is your take on that?
So that's a tough call. Because on one hand, I say yes, but there is a part of me that questions whether Sinestro truly can love someone other than himself. Part of it, it could very easily be that he is doing what a father should do. He's doing what, he's like, this is the right thing to do, not because I care about her, but because if I am her father, I should do this. And I'm going to do this just to prove to everyone I can do this and still be Sinestro. And I don't know if, like, you or I would make a sacrifice for our child because, we would want to keep them safe, but we would also let her warn her friends about what's coming down, or if I saw that that was coming down, I'd find a way to help out. I would help out the Corps. But he's intentionally not letting her go there because he's like, hey, forget the Corps. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're focusing on. And he's not giving her that option to help her friends. And I like the fact that when she's having that discussion with what's her name? Amaral, and talking about Sinestro, she, it's like, hey, he hasn't changed. This is always who Sinestro's been. Has he tricked you, or did you trick yourself? this is the true thing that you're dealing with. It's not who actually did it, who actually was doing the trickery here. Was it you or him? And I like the fact that she brings that up to her, because Sinestro's always been Sinestro. He hasn't changed one bit.
The relationship between Sornik and Sinestro is, I think, one of the things that I'm finding super cool. And the reason why is, I like sit there, I'll look at them sometimes, and I can't help but wonder, is Sinestro pushing her to live up to what he sees as his legacy, if that makes sense? He sees the potential in her to be like him. I don't know if his ego would ever allow himself to look at a child as being able to surpass him, but at least living up to the name, to the standard, if that makes sense. To be proud in that sense that they somehow were worthy of being genetically like him. And I think that's part of the reason why he lets her do things like he does here, knowing she's going to kind of betray and go and do her own thing, but yet he needs to let that play out to teach her, to push her, to get something from her, if that makes sense. There's something driving that is intriguing to him. Like I think almost he would be more impressed if she succeeded.
Yeah, he's a interesting character, because of just his nature, that you sit there and you could very easily say he's a villain, but that is kind of almost too simplistic as to who and what Sinestro's all about. And I love that, again, rereading that fight sequence between him and Sornak, was a really cool moment, because you see her just slugging it out and just pure on rage, and he's just actually taking it easy on her. And he even comments a couple of times, yeah, I'm taking it easy on you. I could very easily destroy you right here and now, but I don't want to do that. And I like the fact that throughout the fight, the transport she was going to steal to get the Korrigans off the planet, she ends up destroying, and even brings it to a point saying, hey, you just destroyed the transport you were going to use. How are you going to get him off the planet now? And this whole time, he's keeping his cool while she's throwing everything she's got at him. And not only is he dealing with it, but he's like reversing it and just, bashing her back to the point where he's able to physically pull the ring off of her. And part of me wonders if she actually doesn't allow that to happen. If if in the back of her mind there's a piece of her saying this is the right thing to do, and it's kind of I don't really have much evidence to go by, other than with you think about her discussion earlier with the one Korrigan leader, where she said, hey, who actually did the tricking? Did you trick yourself into thinking Sinestro was any different? And then later because think about the ring being pure about willpower. With him able to physically just pull it off of her, and then, she gets the new yellow ring, somewhere in her mind, she wants to be with her father. She wants, to, I don't know if it's, if there's a curiosity or if there's something, if it's a family connection or something. There's, I think there's going to be later down the line, we're going to learn that she actually wanted to be a part of the Yellow Corps. Well, it wasn't completely just, him taking the green ring from her. She actually willed it to happen.
I think it's kind of like Guy Gardner, though, more than 100% wanting to be a part of the Sinestro Corps. Sinestro's planting some seeds here that I think are pretty powerful as well. Like, when he's sitting there, I have no interest in harming you. Quite the opposite, in fact. But I don't need the full scope of my power to best you, girl. Yet, you still attack without fear, and that is why you will lose. And he starts planting the seed there that you need to attack with fear. You need to understand your fear. You need to embrace your fear to learn how to instill fear. It's not controlling fear. And that's the different part of this. She's starting to understand it. He's teaching her lessons. He's planting the seeds in her head for this. And I think that's where I think you're right. I think it's complicated, more complicated than that, though, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I do think she's tried and true a Green Lantern. She earned that ring, and she's tried and true a Green Lantern. But we've seen with Guy Gardner, that's not always the full story. And I quite like that this book has kind of become my replacement for what Red Lanterns, what I thought the best of Red Lanterns was doing is what this book's doing well now. And it feels fresh and different because of the fact that it's the Sinestro core, and we're seeing them studied and explored in a way that the Red Lanterns were being studied and explored at their best in that book. That is where this is becoming intriguing.
Yeah.
This book with just Sinestro alone isn't as powerful. Sinestro could carry a book easily on his own. I'm fine with that. But having all of these other factors, especially Soranik, I really think the relationship with Soranik here is pivotal. That part, when she gets the ring on her, I agree with you. I think there's a piece to part of her wanting it because it's her dad. I think part of her resents the fact that it's her dad.
Yeah.
I think it's a very complicated puzzle picture that's there. I think she is a tried and true Green Lantern. I do think that she has the elements in there that come from, genetically being her dad. How much of her having a ring is dad allowing it? That's a part that I'm kind of wondering. Did he set her up and then allow this to happen to start guiding her further down a path? I love that he looks on sort of as a proud papa, but more of it's that's where the love question comes in. Does he love being a father? Does he more want to be a puppet master with her? Does he more want her to live up to what she should because she's genetic lineage? Is it all of the above? Is he capable of love? I don't know. It's a very interesting puzzle. That's the part that's intriguing. It's that all of those questions are valid. You can't pin it down. And that's what makes it intriguing.
Yeah, and you think back to the preview issue for Sinestro. It was after she already had her ring, and they were doing their first kind of Yellow Lantern Corps going out and kind of defending the universe, sort of, in a way. And she even reacts. I love she was having an issue with using the ring to heal. And Sinestro's got to teach her about, hey, this isn't just about willpower. This is about fear. Fear what it would be like if you can't help these people.
No. Remember the times you failed to save people, and use that to drive you. Because I agree with you on that sequence. I think that was pretty pivotal. And he had her go back to remember how you felt when you failed to save people. Use that, and she was able to instantly channel it from that.
Yeah. It's kind of neat to see. She's going to be a really cool piece of this puzzle. Where going through and showing us what is the yellow ring, because it's not just. There's more to the ring that's going to come. We're going to find out that, just like how with the Green Lantern ring, there's more than just willpower, because there's a lot of heroes with a lot of willpower who couldn't be a member of the Green Lantern Corps, but they are still strong-willed people. I love that one back when Ollie had the ring on and he could barely get one single arrow to come out. And Ollie's got willpower, he's got discipline, but there's still something else. And even when Batman the one time had the ring on, it's about more than just the willpower to create something. There's got to be a piece of you in there's something that internal about the Green Lantern Corps. Same thing with the Yellow Lantern, and we're going to start seeing what makes a Yellow Lantern throughout this. And that's something I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. To the universe, to to Soranik, to the Yellows. More clues going towards forward with the Greens. This is a really cool universe right now.
Can we talk a little bit about Constantine Hellblazer? Do you mind?
Oh, sure.
I asked you the other day when we were talking, I'm like, we were planning out like things we talk about in this episode. I requested this one, and I'm going to share why. I read this first issue, and I was really surprised at how much I loved it. And I liked the previous Constantine series. I was a fan of that. I've liked the Vertigo stuff before. This, for me, I think they got the formula right. Like, it's the right amount of Vertigo, the right amount of, I guess, mainstream, if I'm making any sense. And I think the amount of Vertigo more is what I'm liking about this. Like, John's really John in this. And I quite like that. And that's the only way to say it. This is a guy, I felt like this was a good relaunch. I felt like his costume change was, and really, our art change in general, was really reflective of kind of giving this more of an edgy, and not edgy for the sake of being edgy. I know you and I've talked about in that show many times how sometimes that's done and it's not done well. it gave this book a lot edgier of a feel. I really got more of the sense that just John is not concerned with being everybody's buddy. John is very concerned with John's motivations and what he's trying to do at any given moment. And anybody could be a sacrificial lamb due to that. I like that this is a man who's haunted all the time. The creep factor of that, those ghosts traveling around with him, I thought was a key to this, because it made me kind of question, what does this do to a human being? Like, that the people that you've touched, the people that you've encountered, people that you've had situations with, whatever, wind up traveling around with you. And you've got to deal with that. And obviously some of them are going to have more of an affinity for him than others. It seems like nobody really loves John Constantine, but they certainly don't hesitate to give their 2 cents worth as things are going on. And I quite like that aspect of this book. It does feel wicked. Like it's not, this is not a clean book. And I quite liked that. To me, this was, I have no doubt in my mind saying, I feel this is a step up from the previous book. And I think it doesn't feel like it's forced into the DC universe. And for some reason, that's helping me. I loved what was going on before. I was a big fan of Justice League Dark. I was a big fan of John's book before. This, for some reason, was a relaunch where I'm like, wow, okay, I didn't know why they needed to relaunch this until they did it. Now that they've done it, I really like what they did with the first issue, at least, out of the starting gate. It kicked the book up a notch for me. I'm much more intrigued by the book, and I liked the book before, so don't get me wrong. I feel like this book's more intriguing to me. Where are you at, though? Because I don't know that we necessarily... that's my opinion. You hadn't read it as of when you and I had talked, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So where are you at on this book? Are you in a similar place or are you in a different place?
I'm digging it. It's weird because for me, this has the same kind of level that the other book. You were talking about how to you it seems like it kind of kicked it up a notch. I'm not going to say that it's like it's kicked it up a notch for me, but it's still that same solid read. Has a different look and kind of groove, but it's still the same John. It's still the same, SOB that he is, and I really enjoy that side of him. So again, like you, I enjoyed the Justice League Dark. I loved him and Zatanna and everything that happened between them and how that horribly ended. But to me, this seems like a continuation of what we've had going on before. This is, he has that same kind of groove to him, and I'm really digging just the vibe and the feeling to him and how, it's how it's playing out. Where, is he a hero? Is he not? We had a conversation earlier about Sinestro. You can have that same kind of argument about John. Where is he a hero? Is he a good guy, or is he not as bad as the people he's putting down? And it's part of that, I think, is part of the charm that is Constantine. And I'm glad with this they're going back to the Hellblazer name, because it's still Constantine, but it's Constantine the Hellblazer. And I like the fact that kind of bring that back into it, because this guy seems less hero, less, than what he was before, but he's still the same guy. It's, it's kind of bringing out the worst of him, but not the bad guy in him. It's just, he makes the choices that Superman would never even think of making.
I like that the first issue dropped us into this happening. John had obviously just been through some form of demonic ritual or whatever, and he's at like this store, and he doesn't have money on him, obviously, unless he's carefully hiding it. So he hypnotizes the girl, mesmerizes her, and basically makes her think that he's carrying a credit card, and that what she's seeing in front of her is very, very normal. Buys this new outfit. What I loved during the ghost sequence, and I think that's what I think why this book kicked up a notch for me. I agree with everything you're saying. I really liked it before. I think what I'm liking about this is they've taken kind of a different approach in the sense like they're dealing with real world consequences to John's actions. Like even in this store sequence, I love that the ghost is pointing out the fact that this girl's going to get canned. And ultimately that event, one pivotal event there, could trickle down to her going home, maybe setting her on her life path on a very different direction than it would have gone because of just interacting with you. There are people who are left, basically suffering in the wake of John. What seems like a small event in this, because a lot of times those are things that don't get dealt with in comics. And I love that this book is touching on them. Because that is a seemingly small enough event, like you laugh and go, hey, cool, and John pulled a fast one on her, but there would be a consequence to that. And how cool is that it's being addressed in this fashion? And I love that the Ghost brings it up. Then it kicks into, the introduction to the Ghost, and we're going through in the internal dialogue. But I love that along the way, John rips a guy off.
Yeah.
Takes the guy's wallet. And basically, that's how he's surviving. He's pickpocketing people and things like that. This is a guy who lives on the street, lives off the money of others. He doesn't have a 9-to-5, per se. It's funny, you and I, the past couple of days have been, trying to find time to record. This week, it was my work schedule that was getting in the way. It's interesting reading this and seeing John doesn't have those restrictions. John really, his life is this pursuit of the occult and these events and these happenings and things like that. And because of that, John, pickpockets and does whatever it takes to keep moving on and moving on. Well, I love how this wound up being a victory for him because he gets to eat a little better because of the choice that he ended up making here. The interesting part with John, I don't remember John being... Well, I guess he was kind of in the previous one because of what went on with Zatanna and, what was it, Nick? Was it Nick? The other guy.
Yeah.
Was that Nick Nack? I forget. The other guy there was the three of them that were together. And there was an implication that John had a relationship with him as well. So I guess this was part of him. It was interesting in the bar, the whole thing that was going on.
Yeah, he's flirting with the guy. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That was something that I kind of... It threw me initially because I never really thought of John that way. But to be honest with you, it actually does sort of makes sense with who he is.
Agreed.
And how he rolls. That he wouldn't have such labels where he's like, I'm only this way. John's one of those, let's see where this goes in life type of style to him. So I could see him completely, playing for both teams.
Yeah, and but not really committing to either.
Right. Oh no, this isn't
because he's not a commitment guy. Yeah.
This is just about enjoyment. This is just about pleasure.
The Blythe sequence I really loved. And here's where I thought it was really, really cool. The Blythe sequence kicked off, and it turned into this page with an incredible amount of story and dialogue. The floors of the stages of hell.
Yes.
The Inferno. And I really loved how well crafted that was, because I just thought it was a lot of storytelling depth. Like, this issue had a lot. I felt it was like a meaty, very depth-filled issue. And it was, I guess that's another reason why I felt this felt very vertigo to me in its presentation. I felt like I was just getting a lot of story content here, and I felt like I got to know the characters. I love that I got to know Blythe and John, and I kept feeling like, well, maybe Blythe's going to be like this regular supporting character, and John and Blythe are going to have kind of this kind of thing going on. Boy, did that change quickly. And I loved that. The way that the whole thing played out, I thought was really just a terrific story, and that came more from the depth presented.
Yeah, it's funny. Once again, digital format on this kind of was really awesome. I initially read this on the paper format, and it's this beautiful 2-page spread, and on paper you could see it, and you'd say, yeah, it looks cool, but when I got this digital, there's no crease, there's no nothing. It's just one solid piece, and you're just sitting there, and it took me, I spent my time on this page.
Yes.
And you just start going through with the different levels, with limbo, lust, gluttony, greed. You start looking at the different stuff's going on, but also just everything that Blythe is laying down. And I love the fact that she's doing most of the talking here. And when you're trying to do a con on somebody, you're going to keep going, pum, 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 pum. You're going to keep them, try to keep it dancing, try to keep it going. And that's what she's doing here. And especially going back and rereading this page, knowing what she was trying to do, how she was trying to trap John. I'm going to use him. And it was a great way, she was keep going, and she's talking, and she's just trying to keep things moving, and just, you see her trying to play him. But again, this is Constantine. You really can't, he's a very tough guy to play. You got to know exactly the game you're doing and how you're running the con, because he is the ultimate con man. It's not just a magic user. This is part of the charm of Constantine, that, you question hero, villain. No, he's a con man. And sometimes the con helps people, sometimes the con hurts people. Sometimes the con's neutral. There's always the con, there's always the game. And I like that, seeing that side of Constantine and seeing how it's playing out here.
Yeah, I honestly totally agree with that. That was the part that I really liked about it. I loved that page, like you, I spent a lot of time with it. Felt like a mini comic within the comic.
Yeah.
And it was something I appreciated because I recognized the amount of work that went into that from all parts of creative. And I appreciate that kind of thing because it's not something you get in every issue of every title, nor would it work in every issue of every title. It really worked here to demonstrate visually and story-wise where they were and what it all meant. And it was a unique journey into the world of John, right? And led to that wonderful sequence when they finally got down there where, he's fighting demons and shape changers and stuff like that. And the whole thing turns into then this con where Blythe gets pulled back into the depths again. Because that's just John. John took over and was like, no, this needs to end. This all needs to be stopped. And that was my real goal here. That was something that I really loved, going back then to the ghosts.
Yeah. And I like the fact that it was, how he tricked her.
Yes.
He's throwing out the thing, and he couldn't just get that last piece of the thing, and she jumps in and does the exorcism. And it's because she said the final line, that's why she gets pulled in. Had John said the full curse, he would have gotten pulled in. I love just John playing her that way. And especially kind of digged how when they were giving us the translations of what John was saying. Because you have him using the mystic speak and then the little note star what they're saying underneath it, and it was kind of cool that, again, because a lot of times with Constantine they're throwing out these strange languages and the magic casting and whatnot. So I like the fact that they did put that in there.
I did too. I thought it was just a really well crafted swerve. That was very John. I loved the look on his face when he even was saying that you got me confused. But then they didn't just leave it there. They ended off with, the story's been about how John's haunted by these ghosts, and one of them's dead. And not, they're all dead, but this one is gone for good, and there's a greater problem at work here. And it's just adding to another mystery. I really, as a first issue goes, for me, I meant what I said. I don't know what it is. I think the creative team, the art, everything came together for me. This series kicked it up a notch, and I think it's important to note because I think this series works if you've been reading John Constantine before, but I think it really is a great jump-on point. You never read John Constantine, never read Hellblazer, you're like, I've been interested, maybe you watched a few episodes of the TV show and liked it, whatever. You don't need to know anything to jump into this first issue. It gives you everything you need right in the first issue. This is one of those where the preview is a nice side story, but you don't need the preview even to enjoy this one. From start to finish, this is a complete tale in this issue, and it's very well done.
Well, here's how I took the preview.
Mm-hmm.
The preview is why John's covered in blood at the beginning of the story.
Sure, I agree.
And that's the thing. Again, you didn't really need to read why John's covered in blood, but just because if you know Constantine, he gets in those crazy mixes. But I think that battle, because of how that thing ends, that's where John gets covered in blood.
Quite possibly. Yeah, and I kind of took it that way too, but I don't think you needed it.
Definitely. You didn't need it. It was kind of one of those neat little extra stories, add-ons, and now you know the rest of the story.
It was good. This first issue out of the starting gate, I thought was just page for page, very well crafted, and I really appreciated that page with the stages of hell. I think that was something that was really brilliant, and it's hard to do. You don't see a lot of that depth nowadays. And I just thought it was, I know it required extra work on the whole creative team to put that together, but it added a lot to the story to me. Yeah. The sense of descending layers, and that each layer had a different theme and a different amount of creepiness. The creep factor there was really, this felt more Vertigo-y to me, and I don't, maybe not everyone will agree with me on that one, but for me this did, and I really like the Vertigo sense of Constantine. So I was glad to see that brought into this. I thought the art style really contributed to that, but I also thought it was great writing too. I was enjoying the series a great deal before, and I'm really thrilled to say that this was a home run out of the starting gate for a first issue.
Oh, definitely a home run. Definitely solid hit. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Constantine, especially because with these death or the final shredding of these ghosts, and they're saying it's Constantine's fault. How is he going to react to that? That's your traditional hero would say, "Oh my God, I must stop this." Is Constantine really going to look into this? Is he going to feel guilty for it, or is he going to? How is this going to play out? And I want to see his reaction to that. I know how other heroes would react to it. I want to see how John reacts to this. And I think that, again, this is fabulous writing and great artwork. Another book where it looks different and it needs to look different. You talk about edgy, it's got that style to it. It's got that Vertigo style to it, that feel to it. All complete hats off to all creative parts on this because, again, this was a visual book that fits the story being told. It needs that story. It needs that style to tell this story.
Now, you and I are going to keep exploring, this divergence, this post-convergence relaunch of DC, so to speak, quote unquote, because it's it's kind of hard to call it completely that. But they canceled a number of series and relisted new series with new themes and new tones. For me, it's funny how quickly I didn't care. I don't want to say I didn't care. I've loved everything I've read beforehand. So I've really, something we've talked about on the show that are favorite series. Some of those are gone, and I'm sad to see those gone. But how quickly the excitement of what they've done post-convergence has made me kind of go, I want to know where we're going forward. I'm really excited to go forward. They announced this week a bunch of new miniseries that are coming out down the road. They're going to be some 6-issue miniseries that are reintroducing characters into the DC universe. But they're all done by some of the best creators who have originally like there's going to be a Raven miniseries done by Marv Wolfman, for example.
Ooh.
There's a Swamp Thing miniseries coming done by Len Wein. They're going back and reintroducing certain characters with creators that have had a major impact on those characters previously, but with the intention of make these characters contemporary, make them now, make them feel very today. I like this experimentation. This has been, I just think, this initial month plus of new books and new status quos and new directions for me has just been a pure, I'm finding that I'm really rereading a lot of my books more than usual, because sometimes the amount of rereads that I'm doing now on most of the titles are reserved for books that we're exclusively talking about on the show. Now I'm doing it to wrap my head sometimes around, well, this is a new title. I need to get to know these characters in this world. So I'm really rereading because of there's so much going on in the story. I want to wrap my head completely around it. Dr. Fate was a great example of that. I completely echoed your reading experience as far as what you need to do with it. Omega Men, I do that. I've done that with the preview. I did it with the first 2 issues. That's a very depth-filled story that I'm really digging rereading, but I don't know those characters aside from Kyle, and I'm really getting my head around those. But then I love, your Supermans, your Batmans, and what's going on with the Green Lantern books, and we've got a lot more to talk about. I can't wait to talk about things like Aquaman and stuff with you, which we'll be doing as the months go on. I want to talk about these titles and these new status quos. This is kind of the direction we're going to be going in with a lot of these, where we're going to be talking about some of the returning favorites, the ones that we've already talked about on the show, but we're also going to make sure on each episode to be spotlighting a number of titles we haven't quite talked about yet in this new relaunch to give you our thoughts on what's working, what's not. Because I'm enjoying your commentary, Jim, where there's a book that maybe was a home run for me, but you're not in the same spot I'm in with it. Dr. Fate was a great example of that. I think we were not in completely different places. You're enjoying it, but I'm loving it.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to find other books where the reverse is true. You're more loving it than I am. And I think that's a sign of a victory with diversifying their line, which for me, I think that's been the joy of this. I like that I have a lot of variety to my titles. You've always referred to them on the show as palate cleansers. I think we've got a lot of titles right now that just feel like it's great to read action comics, then jump to a Constantine, read a detective comics, then jump to what's going on in Omega Men. Very different reads and very different experiences, and all of those writing styles are different, presentations very different. The DC universe is a lot less homogenized right now. There's a lot of creative flow going on. And I just can't wait for more of this. I'm really excited for what they're doing at the moment with the titles. I just think this is post-Convergence is really paying off for me. Are you in the same place I'm at, or are you finding that you're missing a lot of what came before?
Oh, I'm so in the same place as you are. I'm sitting here just chomping at the bit, and I'm doing the Ryback, man. Feed me more, and I just keep going more. Feed me more. Feed me more. I'm flying through books a lot faster. It's even though I don't have as much free time, lately because a lot of craziness has been going on in life. I'm still finding time, to read, get through these books. And it's not even just, I got to get through the book for the podcast. It's, I'm attacking these things because I want to see what happens. Like, you threw out Aquaman. Aquaman I jumped on because I was excited to see that. The Greens, jumping on Batman and Batman Beyond. I was like, oh, I got to get to that. Oh, yeah. And I was just like, just attacking this stuff where, it's, there is a revigoration for me as to what's going on here. But it's cool for me because it does feel like, this is in a lot of ways just the continuation of the previous stories, because there's no dramatic flip-flop on your head. Oh my God, the world just changed. There are these stories like Green Lantern's continuing exactly right from where it left off last time, except for this big gap as to what happened. There's the big giant mystery, but it is a continuation. Superman's continuation, Batman continuation of these last there are big events, but they happened within the title, and it's continuing going on. So it's, for me, I don't even like saying relaunch. It's just, This is just the DC universe. When you're coming up with a name for it, post-Divergent, Divergent Universe, DC Universe, this is just the DC universe. It's the old saying, a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. This is still DC for me. This is still that same universe, and I'm excited and enjoying it.
I think what they've done, and I think this is where it's a victory for me, there's certain titles that I was really digging that are gone, and I miss them.
Yeah.
I get that. But I think what happened was they replaced them with titles that I think have diversified the universe. And I hate using that because that word I think is thrown around so much now, and I think it's become a term that I think we're using for too many things, if that makes sense. So it's, what does that mean exactly? In this case, what it means is I think when you see like an Omega Men, it's a very stylized book. There's a storytelling going on, an art style going on, an unfolding drama that's going on there that's very different than other things that have been going on. Dr. Fate, very different. That's why both of those books I think we mentioned, that they require rereads because you're trying to wrap your head around this storytelling style. It's just very different. Constantine was very stylized for me. I like what they're doing with the minis, like your Batmite and Bizarro. I loved the second issues of both of those titles. I thought they were just really good fun. There's a lot of difference to the books that are out there right now. And I'm with you. I love the continuation aspect of a lot of the main titles in the universe. There's a good balance of, we're continuing where we left off before in these books. We're also telling you some new, original, artsy, having some fun with exploring the ways that we can tell stories with these characters that maybe they haven't gained a big following before. Let's try to do something new with them and see if this sticks, see if people are interested in them, make these characters a little bit more today and see if they're relatable that way. I can't wait to talk about things like Doomed, for example. That's going to be a fun book, I think, to talk about. There's some cool stuff going on right now that I think are just going to be unique titles to talk about. We have other books that haven't been released yet that are still coming down the pipeline, like Cyborg. I can't wait for that title.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I miss Batwoman. I really like that. I really, really love that title, and I wish that would have survived. But we are getting stuff like, we're going to be getting Cyborg, Martian Manhunter. We're getting some different stuff, and we're getting some stories that, okay, where is this going to go from? Where is this going to be out? So I miss that, and there's always that hope that maybe she'll make a return somehow, or they'll bring her back. within another title or something, because as a character she was wonderful,
Yes.
and as the book I really dig. So there is a lot of tough choices, but again, I'm still very happy with what I'm getting. There's some really amazing stuff out there, and I'm getting excited about other titles, and I'm getting excited about stuff that I didn't really think, oh, wow, I thought I'd enjoy it, but I didn't think I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. Like Lobo, Lobo, I'm really becoming a fan of Lobo as well. And that wasn't a title that I would have said, oh, I was excited about, but I'm really going, wow, this is kind of cool, especially the second issue. I really dig that. That kind of had me chuckling there. There's a couple moments, and I like the villainous, nature of him, but it's, again, he is that weird question because he's the pure mercenary for hire, but he's the main character. He's going up against people who are more evil than he is, and it's kind of nice to see him how he plays this out and where is he going to go. And you start rooting for the bad guy, with him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one that I'm anxious to talk about. There's a lot of books. So we're going to, just for anybody listening, we are going to be going through, and we're going to eventually get to every title. We're kind of doing it organically. What you're seeing is a theme. They're just books that, like Jim and I, as we're having conversation, we're like, hey, you want to talk about this title? There's a lot of emotion behind the books that we're picking, where they're just books where we were talking, we're like, yeah, cool, let's talk about this book. And I think that works better for episodes when we're eager to talk about these books. Along the way, we are going to get to everything, because I think it's important that we talk about all the titles. Some of them, it's going to be 2 issues into the run, maybe a 3rd issue into the run, depending on how this all plays out. Because I don't want to ignore, and I don't want to deny ourselves the opportunity to talk about some favorites that we've been rereading along the way. The 2nd and 3rd issues of titles that we want to do that. I think that makes for a balanced episode where we can, kind of touch on some favorites while talking about titles that we haven't yet discussed. So we'll kind of balance it out that way, and we hope that you enjoy that.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Okay, this is Jack in Redlands, and I want to answer both Dr. Norge's questions to me. One, he asked if I survived the time tunnel, and since I'm calling you, I did. And number 2, he asked about Section 8. I am in the same boat. I'm in an even worse boat than Sensei of the Whatnot, Jim, because I've never read Preacher. I've never read Hitman. I've never read The Boys. The only Garth Ennis I've ever read, other than this issue of Section 8, is 2 issues of his Punisher run in the Marvel Max series. So I totally did not get the thread on this book. I thought I didn't dislike the book, and I so agree with you guys on the Batman changes, how he changed to different eras. That was just genius. And I can see a lot of things in this book I think I'm going to like, but like Sensei, I think I'm going to need a couple more issues to get the thread on it, and then I'm sure I'll be off and running. But because of what Dr. Norge has been saying, I definitely am going to try out Hitman. And I'm sure that I can get it off in stock trade. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much.
I love that he played along. That's really great. If he did get caught in that time tunnel, he could have gone back through time and read it as it came out. One thing I will say, and I say this with deepest regard. First of all, Hitman I can highly recommend as a series. He mentioned he didn't read Preacher. Do yourself a favor. I read that so much. And thank you for actually calling back and following up on that, because his experience obviously was very similar to yours, Jim, as far as not having the reading experience with it, as far as digging it. I'm going to be curious. We're almost going to have to follow up on that book, 2nd and 3rd issue in, just to see what your journey's like with the book because of the experience. But those are 2 titles. If there's anything that I love about this miniseries, being able to recommend to people, please do yourself a favor and read Hitman and read Preacher. Those were 2 titles when they came out. Ooh, Just really spectacular reading. And the nice part is, like he's mentioning, you can get them in trade very easily now. You can get them digitally very easily right now. In Stock Trades does have them, and I would highly recommend picking them up. Both are very fantastic reads. Preacher is going to be a TV series. It's going to be on AMC, I believe, but it's another one converted over. I highly recommend, though, you definitely want to read the comic. And if there's one thing that the Section 8 book, if there's one thing that it's going to do really well, is if it gets people talking about those titles again and recommending them to an audience that hasn't read them yet, it's doing a favor to that audience. And Jack, please, if you end up picking up either of those books, if you pick up Hitman and start reading it, call back in and let us know your experience. If you loved it, let us know. If you didn't, let us know. I'm always interested in when I recommend things to people. I would love to hear follow-up. And I would say this to anybody listening, please, if we've recommended something on the show and you've picked it up, loved, hate it, wound up somewhere in the middle, tell us why. I'm always interested in that. I consider this an open dialogue, and we love hearing from you. And you don't have to go through a time travel like Jack did. You can just call us up without doing all that. Oh, it's actually Jack. Thank you for calling back in again. I was hoping to hear from you after that, just because it was. And thanks for playing along.
How's it going, guys? Sean, Jim, it's Brandon calling out of New Orleans. Long time no hear. I've been extremely busy lately, and I haven't gotten to listen to any of the show or read any of my books lately. I finally took the last couple of days and got caught up. By the way, happy 4th of July, late. As one of the benefits, I got to have a couple of days off and catch up on all the books I haven't read for a long time now. It seems like almost a year. But yeah, man, a couple of things we could talk about. Batman, for one. Wow. Huge changes happened in that book. At first, I didn't think I was going to like this whole Jim Gordon and the robotic bat suit, but surprisingly, it's caught me, and it's caught me more in the detective books than it has the Batman book recently. And you guys know me, Batman's my book; it's my favorite book, and it's still really good. But I love the way detective is now focusing on Montoya and Harvey and their relationship and what's going on in that section. It's awesome to have this little task force coming and following up on Batman. And I am sorry to cut my voicemail short, but my stepdaughter is now calling me, so I will call back and continue this call, guys. Anyway, I'm about to start catching back up on the show. I can't wait to hear what's been going on, and nice talking to you guys again.
It's funny how I can relate to that. It's you mentioned something on the podcast that you were talking about how your time has been cut down lately, and mine has too. It's something that's interesting. I love when the comics are so good that you relish those times when you can really sit down and do some serious reading. I love those days when I can take like a couple hours and just sit down and read and really just enjoy the experience. You mentioned before not doing it for the show, doing it because you really want to read them. And I think that's been something post-Convergence. I really do feel everything that I'm reading right now is stuff that after I'm done reading, I'm like, I'm glad I read them for me. And there's a distinction there between we reread things for the podcast a lot of times just because of the fact that we want to, when we're having our conversations between the two of us and our trading back and forth, we want to really understand the book that we read to present our own opinion, because half the fun for me is when you and I see something differently, we debate it out, or I'm kind of floored by, because it happened a couple times on this episode where you had made a leap on where you think the book's going, and I didn't have an argument in either case. There was 2 cases where you did that on this episode, and I found myself wanting to go back and reread now to see if I see it your way, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
I like that kind of stuff, and it's one of the reasons why I like rereading books for what we do. But I have felt like with this, since this whole event kicked off and ended, and we've had like now a month and a half-ish of these books, it's been fun to just read them and want to reread them And it's true of almost all the titles. I've wanted to reread them because I want to wrap my head around them, or I want to re-enjoy a book or something like that. We talked about it with Secret Six, how it was just kind of like we couldn't stop rereading that book. This has been a fun time for comics. Our schedules get tighter. That's been true my whole life. You know, we have roller coasters. Everybody listening to this, I'm sure you've been in the same position. Sometimes it's financial, the financial times that make it hard for you to read as many titles as you want. Sometimes it's time, work, jobs, school, whatever you're going through. Life in general, family has got stuff going on, and you can't read as much as you'd like. I like having a nice stack of comics when I'm ready for them. I found that I've really appreciated the variety of being able to pick up a bunch of titles and just really enjoy the experience of being immersed in that world, that escape. And that's why I geek out so much, I think, from when I read my comics, because that's my escape from everything. That's my break from work. I was so connecting with everything Brandon was saying as far as, it was nice this weekend just to be able to kick back for a couple of days and get caught up and just enjoy getting caught up and loving that experience. And I love that he checked in because I so relate to that experience. I'm sure it looked differently for the two of us, but I like that, and you and I talk about this a lot, how this hobby, I think it keeps our sanity. It makes me better at work. It really does. Being able to read comics and enjoy the experience and, kind of get back into life, get back into work, get back into what's going on with family, friends, things like that. It's what comics has always done through my whole life, and it's why I've stuck with the hobby since my childhood. I think that escape's important at times, to be able to kind of just and smile. And it's great when the material's this good and this has this much variety to it that I would have no hesitation telling somebody to read the free previews from DC to find a couple of titles that they should read. Because I think the lineup is diverse enough right now that it has enough variety. And I want to throw that variety word in too because, again, that diverse word I think a lot of times is I don't want to say overused, but I think it's overgeneralized. I think it's used in too many cases, and I think it's hard to pin down exactly what people mean by it. In this case, it's variety. There's just a lot of variety out there right now. People are getting experimental and trying different things with some of these books, and I think the line's benefited from that. I really do. And I think it's very easy to recommend to people, hey, check out these free previews. You're going to find something you like there. I think you really have to try to not find a comic that would be right for you right now. Yeah. So it's good stuff. And Brandon, thank you for calling. It's always good to hear from you. And please remember our show voicemail line is 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. It's always available on our website in the About Us section. It's also in every show notes, which is also all over the website, and it's in every podcast. Actually, we embed it in every podcast. And we do that on purpose because we want to hear from you. So please feel free to call in with any of your comments and thoughts about anything that you want to chat about. And don't feel you're limited to books that we've already gotten to. If there's something that you want to chat about that, like, hey, guys, I really want to hear about this, and I've got some thoughts I want to shout out about these titles, go ahead. They can be older titles. And I'm... if you've got a podcast or a blog or, something going on or Kickstarter, actually, I would like to take a couple seconds, speaking of Kickstarter, to one more time shout out on behalf of the Molly Danger Kickstarter. It's at the tail end, and I really want to recommend to people, I want to see this. I don't do this a lot. I don't shout out Kickstarters a lot on the show, not because I don't like them. I try to make sure I shout out ones that I'm passionate about supporting. And that's why I open up the voicemail lines. If you got one that you're passionate about, and it's a comic-related one, you want to shout out on the show, please go ahead and do it. I'm fine with that because I want to support these things, and maybe you'll point me at something I haven't been picking up. Molly's one, though, Jamal Igle is a long-time friend of the show. He's an amazing artist, great work at DC throughout the years with Jamal Igle. He is just an amazing talent. And Molly Danger I'm recommending because I think it's a great book. I'm selfishly asking people to take a look at it, please. It's in. It's going to be, once again, the link's going to be in our show notes. And I'm asking people selfishly, please check it out to see if it's a Kickstarter for you. If it's not your cup of tea, what I'd really ask you, please get viral with this and just shout out the link. Let people know that it's out there. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, but maybe your followers on Twitter, Facebook, wherever, maybe some of them, it is their book. It's the book they're looking for. Please look at it and try to get it in the hands of people that want to support it. I'm not asking people to follow anything blindly. I'm asking people to take a look at it and please consider supporting it because Jamal's a terrific guy. The book is something I want to read. So I'm asking you on my behalf personally, either consider donating yourself or please be a part of the viral movement to get the word out. I think that's just as important in the case of Kickstarter because then you get the audience coming towards a book that they want to read, which is ultimately good for the creator. So if any of you out there could consider doing that, I would really appreciate that, and that's really all I got to say about that. I like the whole viral thing of Kickstarter, and I think it's a great chance for us as a community to help this book out. And I please ask you and implore you, if you can't support it financially, or maybe it's not your cup of tea, to please help shout it out in social media and get the word out that this book's out there. So hopefully some people that maybe follow you can read it. So that's all I ask for that one.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
I want to remind everyone about our show website, ragingbullets.com. That's where we post news on what's going on with the podcast, when the episodes are going to be released, what our status is. We always do the updates there, and that does feed Twitter. So if you're more of a Twitter fan, you can follow us on Twitter there as well. We also have a Facebook fan page, but more importantly, there's a Facebook group, and it's a thriving community thanks to the wonderful people that are there. I love popping in just to see what people are talking about. The community has grown so far beyond our show. I know I've shouted that out many times. I do encourage you, if you're not a fan of Facebook groups and never have joined them before, this is a group you're going to want to join. It's just because of the great people. Remember that Facebook groups do have, and I like to shout this out, they do have the function where you can turn off the email reminders. A lot of times I know that when I've talked to people, that's kind of their drawback of joining a Facebook group. You can pop in and out of this at your leisure and find out people repost DC news, they post pop culture news, everything you really want to know about, they're talking about there. They do these great Google Chat hangouts, and it's a community of people. You can be as active or casual a participant as you want, and that's one of the nice things about the group is it's a fun, friendly group that's great to pop in and hang out regularly with, or pop in casually. And sometimes that's going to, like we talked about the roller coaster on this episode, sometimes, being able to pop in and out of those groups is kind of like a roller coaster, but it's always great to catch up with friends. And I genuinely feel that the people there, because of the quality of them, I feel like they're friends. And that's a testament to those people. So I wanted to shout that out. We have personal Facebook pages. We're on Google+. Basically, I'm on the PlayStation Network. Feel free to add me. Wherever you're at socially, we're there and basically want to shout out and hang out with you. Sponsoring this episode, once again, is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCB Service, Jim?
Bundles, 50% off bundles, new series bundles, 50% off returning series bundles, and 45% off the 75th the Green Lantern 75th variant cover bundles. Outstanding.
Over at InStockTrades.com. I was talking so much about the deals of the week. Let's talk about some of the latest releases. I'm looking over here. There's the Justice League hardcover, Volume 6, 42% off, only $14.49. Aquaman, Sub Diego. Remember that storyline? The trade paperback of that is 42% off, only $9.85. Aquaman hardcover, Volume 6, Maelstrom. This is from the New 52. That's 42% off, only $14.49. Batman Arkham Origins trade paperback from the video game, 42% off, only $8.69. There's just a wonderful array of amazing material. The Spirit, Will Eisner's The Spirit, a celebration of 75 years of that character. 42% off, only $28.99. I didn't pick that up, and I want to grab that. It's funny, one of those things that I just was like, oh, wait, how did I miss that? And that's published by DC, but it's a collection of this great Spirit stories, and I'm excited to read more of that. I know that book's coming out now from, is it IDW? One of the companies picked it up. DC doesn't have the license anymore. IDW, I think, picked it up. And I like the character enough that I'm going to pick up the new Spirit book. But I'm anxious in some of the history of the Spirit, because I have not read a ton. I read the DC Spirit when that book was coming out. I have not read a ton of the classic Spirit, and I want to go back and read more of that, because I really like the character. So that's InStockTrades.com. Jim, our next episode, we're going to continue doing what we're doing right now and just chatting about some of the things. I think on this episode, we talked about Aquaman. I think we really need to talk about that next week. Let's talk about Martian Manhunter. Let's go to some of these titles that we haven't discussed yet, and we'll, of course, touch base with some old favorites as well. But Aquaman After you said it, I'm
Definitely.
like, oh, I really want to talk Aquaman. And Martian Manhunter 2 were two of the ones that
Flash.
came out. Flash. Yo,
Flash.
yeah. I'll always talk Flash. There's a lot of stuff to discuss, so let's talk about them next week, and we will see you then.
Bye.
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.